Welcome to the Stop Doing Stupid Stuff podcast, where hosts Tim Keefe and Andreas Wieman cut through corporate noise to talk about what actually matters in business and employee engagement. If you've ever sat through a pointless company meeting, received a participation trophy masquerading as workplace culture, or wondered why your Best Place to Work award didn't match your experience, you're in the right place. These two aren't afraid to call out the foosball tables, the beanbag chairs, and the $1 million annual surveys that companies use to justify their workplace culture. Their turnover rates, meanwhile, tell a completely different story. In this episode, Tim and Andreas dive into surprising research from Indeed that exposes a hard truth. Only 25% of employees are actually thriving at work. But here's where it gets interesting. The data reveals what really drives well-being, and it's not what most companies think. Energy, belonging, and trust top the list. But most organizations are still throwing money at the wrong solutions. The hosts break down why your employees don't need another perk. They need to feel valued, heard, and part of something meaningful. Through real-world examples and their innovative AI-driven platform BalanceWise IQ, Tim and Andreas show how organizations can move beyond annual surveys and actually listen to their people every single week. Spoiler alert, the most powerful engagement tool they discuss costs almost nothing. So, grab your coffee, get ready to challenge some assumptions, and let's stop doing stupid stuff. Together.
Hi, everybody. This is Tim Keefe with my co-conspirator and sometimes friend, Mr. Andreas Wieman, and we are talking to you from our SDSS podcast, as in Stop Doing Stupid Stuff. So, Andreas, what's the stupid stuff we want to talk about today?
Sometimes, friend. I like that. That's being a bit gracious. But I like that intro.
Well, it's early in the week, and I'm in a good mood.
Oh, I meant the other way. Yeah. So,
I got it. The question is, who owes money to who at this point?
good answer. Touche. No, it's a good article, something that both of us have been, talking about the past, I would say, couple of years, but it's probably been longer than that. And speaking of the name of the podcast, Stop Doing Stupid Stuff, it continues to be done, not being stopped. And it's stupid. It should be stopped. That's my eloquent intro there. So for everybody else that's still listening, the article is in Business Insider. It's actually sponsored by Indeed in their research paper here that we'll kind of quote throughout. But the name of the article is New Data Says Your Team's Well-Being Could Be Your Biggest Business Advantage. And this is where we go when we talk about, Tim and I always joke around, right, about the annual survey. And it's funny when we talk to HR executives and leaders all over the world, we joke about, yeah, you do it once a year, you pay hundreds of thousands, in some cases, $1 million plus for, a annual survey, so you can have this marketing award that you can put up and say, oh yeah, we're this awesome place to work award that we've earned, and come work with us. And then new people come and they work there, and they're like, oh man, this ain't that great. Like, how did they get this award? Like, oh, well, you do this once a year survey, at the very end of the year when there's a lot of stuff going on, and hopefully everybody's pretty happy, and we reflect that in our results. But the rest of the year, yeah, don't worry about it. But it's an awesome place to work. What's your attrition rate? Oh, it's a great place to work. It's awesome here. So, anyways, there's some stats that we'll kind of talk about because obviously, and I think a lot of people listening to this would have the tendency to agree from what they're seeing through their own lens. There's just so much volatility and so many different variables. Just a lot going on right now,
Yep.
probably more so statistically speaking, objectively, I would say, because of the generation that is making up the workforce now and the distribution of the generational workforce and the means of the workforce. It's not majority is working in the office and there's like this little sporadic niche work at home. No, it's mixed, and people honestly haven't been trained properly to
Well,
manage in a mixed environment, engage appropriately, or have the tools to engage. So, anyways,
and I think,
longest tee up
well,
ever. So yeah, let me kick it over
yeah.
to you.
No, but I mean, no, it's a great tee up. And I think one of the things that we've seen with some of our clients through our BalanceWise IQ product is that, this kind of monolithic view of your workforce where everybody's the same is a huge problem because it's not that. You and I, without naming the client, just recently looked at some data and where we had a really cool breakout by generation. And the differences in the engagement and why people are engaged or disengaged was very, very dramatic, I thought. And, you kind of step back from that and you kind of go, wow. And I think of some of the other podcasts we've done. I mean, what was it, a month or two ago, we talked about AT&T and T and that mandate around office attendance that sounded so boomerish, for lack of a better term, but, kind of like mandate thou shalt. And if you don't like it, get out. And that's pretty strong language because if you start
Yeah.
chasing out everybody, you're going to have a problem. And oh, we're going to replace everybody with AI tools and blah blah blah. And you're like, you, no question, there are enablers in artificial intelligence that may allow for us to maybe have fewer people, fewer humans in customer facing roles. But those humans now play a very interesting, they are not handling the transactional stuff. The AI is handling the transactional stuff. So the human, your human customer facing staff are going to have more tools, more training, because
Yep.
what they're dealing with are the really gnarly problems. And if your goal is to drive engagement with your customers, and your goal is to get referrals and repeat business or renewals from your customers, you've got to be there for them. And what does that mean from an engagement perspective? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, no, no, no. That actually what you just ended with there is what I was going to lead in with and saying, like, look, I'm going to say straight up right now for a majority of the businesses. Now, there is some that this statement's not going to apply to, but I would feel it's in the minority. And if anybody wants to challenge me on this, hey, DM us and we'll be happy to have you on the podcast to talk about this. But I do not see with the current AI and the tech stack within the AI and the commercial application. I don't see AI replacing humans. I just don't see it. In certain niche jobs, yes, there's functions, but what I think's happening or what we're observing, right? I don't even want to say what I think because my opinion is irrelevant. Honestly, it's like $10 a month fee to hear my opinion anyways that you have to pay extra for it because I don't give that away for free, by the way. But just all
Ah,
of the data
uh,
is showing that more and more people are actually entering the workforce. And yeah, you hear layoffs in the news because that's what the news does that. The news doesn't highlight the mundane kind of normal stuff that's going on. They want to get to the bombastic, attention grabbing headlines and they say, "Oh, let's say for example, Salesforce lays off 10,000 people." I'm like, "Well, yeah, they overhired salespeople, a year in anticipation of future sales. Salesforce did something stupid. You don't want to put that a highlight or a headline because then you're going to put yourself up for defamation with Salesforce. And so they're kind of playing safe and being bombastic about it. But really, what's happening, you're seeing people move around, but you're also seeing leaders and when I say leaders, I'm talking about C-level leaders of large organizations, and they don't know how to apply, quote unquote, apply AI the right way because what they're trying to do, they're not even measuring what humans do, their human workers, their employees do adequately today. And they're trying to take that framework and put that in a very genericized machine learning model and apply an output of Gen AI that's going to be able to, either create visually the output that the human does or the interaction the human would have with with a customer or even internally. And then it's being bugged out, it's erroring out, it's hallucinating. I mean, we're seeing that kind of all over the place. Again, that doesn't get a lot of hype from the news because I don't know who's some of their biggest advertisers. I don't know, maybe some of the AI companies that are trying to sell the AI product. So there's this big kind of like circular mechanism that I think everybody is kind of stuck in. But when you just step back, and if you're nerdy like we are, we go look at the data, it's still predominantly human driven. And so once more organizations realize that, and I think Indeed, who does the hiring, right? That's Indeed's kind of thing, is helping companies hire the right people for the roles, right? They're not going to go advertise and say, oh, yeah, here's the right AI you need to hire for the role. No, they're focused on people. So they have a vested interest, right, in making sure that the right people are hired, profiled, and highlighted. So they've gone out and they've done the research along with Gallup, who we quoted multiple times in their State of the Global Workplace report that shows disengagement or engagement is at all-time lows, right? Now, Indeed, in their article here in the Business Insider, they're also showing that disengagement is rising, and all of the other factors around employee just well-being in general. And well-being isn't like it used to be in the workplace where it's like you check personal life at the door when you walk in and you pick it back up when you clock out. That's not the case. There's a big overlapping structure between them. And a lot of that has to do with all of the environmental factors within the world today that we live in, but also the generational makeup, the technology, the connectedness of social media. It doesn't matter if you're at work or not, you have access to it. And so all of that kind of contributes to well-being. So it's a little bit more complicated, I would say. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be. So now leaders have to deal with all of this stuff, right? Everything that I
Well,
just, spit out right there, like everybody's going to have to deal with that. And they're used to dealing with it on a checklist-based kind of structure
right.
that just happened to work out. That checklist is antiquated now. And so now if you're putting on the shoulders of these leaders who are like, well, I've always done this to be successful. And guess what? That ain't the recipe. That doesn't fit into the current, modernized equation. So, anyways, that was a lot of talking there. So I'm gonna go on mute, take a sip of coffee, and
Wow.
open
This
it to
is
you.
now I know how you feel normally on these
Exactly.
podcasts. Well, I also think that we kind of go back to people say, and used to say it, I still think many, many companies agree with this, that one of their most valuable assets and one of their most expensive assets are the employees. And of course, that's why we have this conversation about AI. And by the way, again, I'm going to, we've seen this before. Interactive voice response was going to replace all the call center staff.
Yeah.
That was 30 years ago. That didn't play out the way everybody thought it would. And and again, and AI tools are great. They definitely have a place. They're an enabler. People are going to have to learn how to use them. And that's definitely an upskilling. They are a transitional technology that is going to have a major impact on society around us. No question about it. I don't think that, everybody's going to be out of a job. I'm not sure who would buy the goods and services if everybody was, but I still don't think that's going to be the case. I think, though, what's really kind of sad is that you go and recruit people. In some cases, companies spend a huge amount of money to do that, right? They're up there competing with the ivories for their graduates, blah, blah, blah. You bring people on because why? You think they're smart, they're going to be engaging, they're going to help contribute to the business growth, and yet you don't really support that.
You
You don't
handcuff
give
them.
them up. Right. You don't give
Yep.
them the opportunity to be creative, to bring their energy to the table. And you just say, no, here's your box that you have to operate in. And God forbid you step out of your box because you're going to get stepped on because, oh, you're too junior or you shouldn't know. And the other side of it is you go to these companies that would like the startup model was all about getting a bunch of smart people in a room and turning them loose, right? And seeing, people taking in inputs and giving you and having the flexibility to pivot quickly to adjust to new inputs and new conditions in the marketplace.
Yeah, let
Wow.
me interject with a stat though from the report there that corroborates exactly what you're saying. Only 6% of people reported high well-being regularly and they experience stress at work. And in contrast, 41% of those with low well-being scores say they regularly feel stressed. So I don't know, but those numbers pretty much corroborate what you just said and the outputs or the outcomes that we're seeing
Yep.
in the modern workplace right now.
And so it's not in this report, but I know in other data that we've seen could be as high as 60% of Gen Zs and maybe even some Gen X have a side hustle because that's where they're investing their creativity, their energy, and they go to work to, like, check, to your point, check the box. Uh, Obviously, oh, what do I need to do to maintain a salary and my healthcare benefits? Okay, that's what I'm doing. Wow, what a drag, right? And as we've talked before, here you have, on average, 70% of probably one of your biggest expense lines in your company, or one of your biggest expense lines in the
Yeah.
company is only delivering 30% of your anticipated value. That's a pretty big effing problem. And yet, it's still, even though we see more and more conversations about employee engagement, it seems very, again, transactional. It's like, oh, we're going to do a once a year survey. Or we're going to do a
Right.
survey every other year. Or we're going to increase the value of our exit interviews, which is complete garbage. Why even
Right.
bother? Nobody's going to tell you anything. And then the other part is, and this we've stumbled on this, maybe not stumbled on it, but been burned by it, is that People are non-confrontational. You ask them face to face, so how are things going? They will tell you what you want to hear. Even if they're pissed, even if
Well,
they're
quiet
angry, even if they
quitting.
hate their job. Right, they're quiet quitting. And they're saying, but meanwhile, given a survey or giving a digital interface, or even more importantly, giving them a safe communication channel, they will open up. And
Yeah.
and
Well, we've
and
seen
what's
it.
been I know. That's what I was. Go ahead. Go ahead. Good stuff.
I was gonna say, I don't know if that was like a softball tee up.
It was
That was
definitely it
not
was
planned,
T-ball, man. This was
right?
T-ball.
So no, no, I agree. I agree. And that's what's fascinating about so like the company that our client that you mentioned earlier, right? And we're not going to name them, but they're a consumer goods manufacturer, right? And they're on our platform, BalanceWise IQ, which is an AI employee engagement platform. And so out of the
Mhm.
200 plus employees that we have on the platform, we were able to look at the weekly pulse checks. I look at well-being every single week. And that's why it's there every single week. And then we look at other categories and dimensions, such as relationship with colleagues and management, autonomy, emotional exhaustion, all of that. We took all of that data and every single week that the employees were voluntarily providing, right? So it's not like they were, you pay like $1 million to do this once a year survey, and HR is breathing down your neck saying, "All right, Tim, got to get this survey done. It's due tomorrow. I've been telling you this for the past 30 days, and get it in there." And then by the time you get in there and do it, you're like, "All right, let me just Christmas tree the answers here. Let me give them what the worst thing, and this is what we see the most. Let me tell them what I think they want to hear, so they leave me alone." The level of integrity in the data is compromised. You can't do anything with it. Now, you flip with BalanceWise IQ, our AI-driven platform, out of all of the data that the employees voluntarily provided to us, along with the verbatims, the comments, which was really, really powerful, right? And they weren't shy. Like you just said, they were not shy. We were able to look at and, you know, dissect down literally to 8 people out of that subset of the 200 plus employees and say, here's specifically what we need to do with these employees or what the engagement activities are and be more prescriptive about it, which the large 1 year annual survey platform providers do not do, right? And so this is where we're trying to practically apply how AI can benefit people, not be a deterrent or replacement for people, but how can you enable your people and how can you go engage with them? Because if you engage with them and you have clues on how to engage with an individual, right? Based off of what they've told you electronically, not once a year, right? But every
Yep.
single week they're telling you and they're giving you clues on how they feel about stuff and what irritates them or,
Ah,
what's going right.
well,
You can engage
and
with
it's all
them.
the to me, it's like all the stuff that we hear, like we're going to change a policy, or we're going to have a company event, we're going to do
Yep.
this, or we're going to do that, and then the big question is, well, geez, did that? What did we accomplish? What we thought we were going to accomplish?
Right.
You and I joke about the foosball tables and the beanbag chairs and the espresso machines, and you're like, oh yeah, we spent all this money and did this, and did we move the needle on engagement at all? And I think the other thing, and I, just to bring this to a close, because I think you and I could go on for a while with this, is I think the really important thing is learning what are the levers, what are the buttons in your team that will make them feel valued, that their opinions, their knowledge, their experience, their energy, which is what you're paying for as an
Yep.
employer, is a valued asset, and you want them to contribute that. You need them to contribute that.
Exactly.
And I've told this story a million times, and people will say, yeah, but that was X number of years ago. And I'll say, but it still works today. The simple things that cost very little or nothing have the biggest impact on how people feel in terms of their value. And I worked for a gentleman named Lee Camp years ago at Pacific Bell, part of what is now AT&T. And every month he would just handwrite a couple of notes to individuals in the team that have been called out. And it would be as simple as, hi, Tim, I really want to thank you for your contributions on getting this deal closed or turning this customer around. And then this is what we're all about, signed him. And people would go, yeah, it's just a note. What do I care? Oh my God, these things would be framed and sit on people's desks because they felt recognized. And what did that
Yeah.
cost? Nothing. I mean, really nothing. And I think this is why when you think about companies spending probably millions, if not tens of millions of dollars on attendance tools and monitoring keystroke movements and mouse movements, they're like, yeah, but what does that have to do with the outcomes that we need as a company? Did that bring in new clients? Did that make our existing clients happier? Did that increase our sales revenue? Did our increase our our subscription renewal? Whatever it is that really matters. I don't think
Right.
attendance really matters. I'm sorry. It just doesn't matter.
Well,
Um,
it's a part of like you were saying earlier, it's kind of a clue that leads you to disengagement or measuring disengagement or anticipating and forecasting disengagement so you can have a early warning system that says, "Uh-oh, this person, their normal attendance pattern is X, and now all of a sudden they're starting to call out every single Friday. They're starting to be, leave early or come in an hour." But that's all, it's all data. And so what we're fascinated with and what we've built in, right, with Balance Wise IQ and having this every single week, just pulse check your people to let them know a new policy came out. Remember, we had another client, we're not going to name the name here, but they were a significantly sized, let's say, public sector client who had been working at home and they were going to revert back to the office, right? And guess what? They had to communicate that effectively to their employees. We're able to use a BalanceWise IQ tool. So every single week, in addition to BalanceWise IQ's normal pulse check, we're able to do the custom weekly questions that say, hey, how was this communicated to you? What was your level of comprehension of the, how do you do to get back to the office, when you need to be there, what equipment you need, like all of that every single week. And then we were able to effectively collect the employee opinions, the sounding post, right? BalanceWise IQ was the sounding post. And lo and behold, I'm not going to say BalanceWise IQ is the sole driver for this by any means, but I think there was a contributing factor that the organization made the decision to say virtual because of the feedback that we're getting from the employees. That's
yep,
powerful. That's the power of having a modern AI tool that listens to people, not replaces people, but listens to people. I will
agreed.
close with one last thing too, and exactly
Sure.
what you were
One
saying
last thing. Yeah.
is parallel metrics. And what we mean by parallel metrics, and again, we're not going to name the client, but think of one of the largest quick service restaurant chains in the world is one of our clients. We met with the CEO and their team, and instead of us coming out and saying, yeah, you just got to focus on the well-being score. If you can get your well-being score up here, then that's it. What do we say? We said, well, yeah, your well-being score is very directionally indicative of these other metrics that you and your CFO look at that drive your business. So you have to look at a parallel metric that says, where's your turnover rate at? Where's your engagement to help with people being here when they're scheduled to be here to ensure the operation runs smoothly? And what are they producing? What is the number of, we didn't say this exactly, but like food units that were being produced and, being able to, how can we make your business, the way you're measuring the success of your business today on profit and loss and P&L, how can you parallel metrics against that with Balance Wise IQ? I don't see people trying to sell, awesome place to work awards with their platform on their 1 year survey saying, yeah, let's make sure that you're financially stable and that, we're directionally collaborating with reducing your attrition because that's, if I ask your CFO if turnover is a big cost to your business, likely they're going to say yes. You don't see them talking about that. We lead with that because we have the data that shows here's how to effectively do it. Here's how effectively you can apply AI to help your people. And guess what? The byproduct of that is your business starts improving with the current variables that the world's facing right now. And it helps you be more agile without taking 20 steps backwards to then take one step again forward. All right, one
Agreed.
thing. So I am done now.
All right. Well, I think it's a good close, and I really appreciate everybody who still might be on listening. Again, thanks for joining us. We appreciate your willingness to spend time with us. And if you have questions, you want comments, you want to join us on a podcast, argue with us, we'd love to have the engagement. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you and stop doing stupid stuff.
You're here. Thanks, everybody.